Well, it was 15 years ago this week that the U.S. Army acknowledged that sexual harassment was a problem running rampant in the military. And today, sexual assault and rape remains a big problem. But critics say the military isn't doing enough to combat this problem. The Department of Defense still doesn't keep a sex offender registry. Victims, both men and women, remain reluctant to report the crimes because they feel victimized in the process. To discuss what's described in The Guardian as a culture of cover-up, we are joined now by Penjota Bertskis, Executive Director of the Military Rape Crisis Center and a United States Coast Guard veteran. Welcome to the show there. So here we are, 15 years later. Why does the problem of sexual abuse and rape remain pervasive in the military?
Well, thanks for having me. I feel that the military has not done enough to prevent sexual assault in the military. I know as a survivor of rape in the Coast Guard that they don't have enough programs in place to prevent sexual assault, as well as to help survivors of military sexual trauma to get the help that they need.
Now, earlier this year, the Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, he said 3,191 cases of sexual assault were reported in the military last year. But he believes that the real number is much, much higher, closer to 19,000. And that is a staggering difference there. So I want to ask you, why do so many victims fail to come forward?
I know through my work with the Military Rape Crisis Center, a lot of survivors do not want to come forward. They want treatment, they want the help, they need the counseling, but they don't want to report it. Out of fear, a lot of survivors do not want to talk about being raped. They don't want to lose their career. Right now, we're looking at 92% of all survivors who do report rape are involuntarily discharged from service.
And why would they fear losing their career? I mean, in this case, you have a victim and a perpetrator. Why is that something that they fear is a risk?
It's what they have been doing throughout the years. So when they witness a sexual assault survivor who does come forward and they are getting reprimanded for reporting a rape and not getting any justice out of it, when they fall, when someone who does witness that in their unit, if they ever fall victim of sexual assault, they're not going to come forward. It's just a long history of intimidation against anyone that comes forward to report a sexual assault.
And what do you think it is? What do you think it is about the setting of the military? Of course, it is hierarchical, excuse me. I can't pronounce that word today. But what is it about the context that makes it hard for victims to come forward?
It's difficult because you're not supposed to tell on, you don't want to be known as a tattletale on your unit. You don't want to be known as the person who's been raped. It's just, I guess, a good old boy club that you don't want to be viewed as weaker for whatever reason, even though I personally feel anyone who does come forward with sexual assault is an extremely brave and strong individual. But just the culture within the military that does not tolerate victims.
And what is it? What happens to the perpetrators of these crimes, these sex crimes oftentimes? What happens to them?
In less than 10% of all cases, there would be a court-martial, and within that, even less are found guilty. So right now we have roughly 90% of all sexual assault allegations pretty much going nowhere. A lot of times we accuse rapists would continue serving, like without even a mark on their record. A lot of times they'll get promoted.
I mean, this is astounding. I mean, that they can be, that they can perpetrate sex crimes, rape in some cases, and you just said that they can get promoted. How can this happen?
It's just how the military works, and that's what we're trying to change. We're hoping to see changes and have a higher prosecution rate. Because right now, less than 10% of all allegation ending up in court-martial is just ridiculously low, and we need to have higher prosecution so people could come forward and trust the judicial system. A lot of survivors don't trust it. Like, why should I report it? It's not going to go anywhere. I know my rapists were handed an honorable discharge and sent out in the community to reoffend if he pleases. And that's the problem.
I mean, and this problem, it seems to be systematic. It seems to be very deeply rooted in the culture of the military. How do we reverse that mindset? How do we reverse that culture to make it so that these sex crimes don't keep penetrating the military?
I feel the only solution is to get the option of reporting away from the chain of command. And I support the STOP Act, which would have a private, independent investigation on all sexual assault cases.
I was doing some reading on this, and I thought it was interesting. The Department of Defense does not keep a sex offender registry. Why aren't they held to the same standards as civilians when it comes to sex crimes? And do you think instating a sex registry would help with the problem?
It definitely is going to help with the problem because the majority of people who serve in the military are doing so honorable. The ones who are committing the sex crimes, they're doing it multiple times throughout their entire career. So having a sex offender registry is going to help not only those within the military, so you can know who is a sex offender, but once you leave the service, it'll carry on. Because right now, once you leave the service, your military records are closed. So even if you are been accused of a sex crime, you don't have to be registered as a sex offender in your community.
And you know, a lot of money is spent on the military, expanding the military, and with all those resources at their disposal, in your opinion, why isn't more being spent devoted to this problem to try to protect members that serve from being a victim of sex crimes?
I feel the money that is spent, it's being spent it's not being productive. They have posters out there that says, wait until she's sober. Like, that's not going to change the military culture on re-victimizing and preventing sexual assault. We need higher prosecution. We need an independent outside investigation, such as what the STOP Act is hoping to do. And I feel that's the only solution.
All right. Really appreciate you coming on the show and talking about this important topic. That was Penjota Bertskis. She is the executive director of the Military Rape Crisis Center and a United States Coast Guard veteran.